Okay, hi. I'm now introducing Ilan Ponimansky. He's a security engineer at Block. So thank you for joining us, Ilan.
With the mic, right? Okay.
All right, thank you, Logan, for that introduction. Like you said, Elon, here we are. You guys, I'm gonna open up the floor. If Elon, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit, give your experiences and stuff?
Sure. Yeah, hopefully everyone can hear me. So a bit about me. Right now I'm a staff cloud security engineer at Block, formerly known as Square. I also have to say that all my opinions are my own. Nothing I say represents the opinions or views of Block. Also, nothing I say is material non-public information, just FYI. Anyway, before that, I was at Facebook, now called Meta, doing security engineering. And before that, I was consulting for companies on pretty much everything security related, from policy to designing multi-cloud strategy, to hands-on work writing tooling for companies from Google to large banks to startups. So I figured I didn't have a lot of time to prepare, so I would just do some kind of AMA about, I mean, literally anything. I'm always candid. There's no stupid questions, so feel free to ask anything about interviewing or preparing, career advice, anything related to cybersecurity, working efficiently. I've given talks on like imposter syndrome too. Random stuff, like you'd ask me about home theater, or like, I don't know, life advice or the secret to happiness or whatever. Happy to talk about anything.
All right, awesome. Yeah, so I'm going to just start out with some questions, and then if anyone in the chat has any questions or in person, please ask them in the live stream, and I'll moderate them through there. So just to start off, you know, pretty basically, as just a question based on cybersecurity, and like you said, you did a little cloud computing. What were like some big risks and other maybe barriers that you faced during your job, and how did you and or your team kind of combat those?
What kind of risk? You mean like personal risk or like business
I
risk?
guess, yeah, I guess business risk and personal risk at the same time. I guess both can go hand in hand and be on the opposite side of the spectrum for a job. So kind of just you can kind of take that wherever you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer both. In terms of business risk, I mean, uh, I'll just say candidly that most people don't care about security, both on the user end and the business end. Meaning, like, of course, people care about security, but when it comes down to it, what really matters is the product. So if you're on a product company, security is a blocker, not a money generator. So the best advice I can give is really understand that security is super important, but you're not seen as someone that's making them money. And that's how you have to approach stuff. Where you can't come in like in the old days with a clipboard and stop people from doing stuff. You need to approach security as what now is like the new buzzwords are like guardrails and paved roads and happy paths. So you design solutions so that people can do their job while also being secure, instead of stopping them from doing stuff, because that's just not going to work. At the end of the day, you're going to have a VP call you up and yell at you and, just tell you to stop. So when you understand that, things become a lot easier, because I've seen like solutions designed that just get rejected or just don't go anywhere because they don't really understand that point. And if you want to be a really valuable and respected security professional, being able to understand that and being able to create solutions that have that in mind, where you're not blocking people, but you're also getting your job done. That's a win-win. That's like a business-minded security professional that really everyone wants, because everyone can say no to stuff. That's not hard. The hard part is understanding like how to balance security and getting the business running and stuff. I guess on a personal level, I guess on this topic, I mean, like, every time I job hop, I feel like that was a risk. I mean, maybe I'm just super paranoid, but um, every time it comes to like give notice and then wait for the new job to start, I don't know, that always makes me nervous. So I never personally take a break. I know a lot of people recommend like taking breaks between jobs and stuff, but I don't know. I always feel nervous about doing that. So I don't know. That's what PTO is for.
Absolutely. Another good question that just came to the top of my mind is, I guess I don't remember how long you said you were out of school into the business world, but like, what are some like key tools and other kind of tips and tricks you'd be willing to share that a have gotten you into your field and have advanced you, and b just like your everyday generalized tools that are good and tricks that are good to use as a cybersecurity professional?
Yeah. Honestly, not much. I've tried to be on top of everything, and all that did was make me anxious. So I would say first and foremost, developing a business mindset before a technical one. Um, I used to be like not a cowboy per se, but just super into like doing things the engineering way and thinking about stuff like an engineer. But in the real world, that doesn't actually work. And if you want to have uh, just really good jobs and I guess get paid the big bucks, you need to understand business. And I think that a lot of people don't focus on the business end. So like I said, understanding like how to balance people and security, thinking about um, uh, project management and timelines and all that boring stuff is what actually gets you paid, and not knowing how to uh, write a custom linter for Terraform or something like that. Um, and then I guess along those lines, also like keeping up with just what's going on. Um, I would caution against trying to be plugged into everything. Um, I know that like a lot of people ask about advice about staying up to date with stuff, but it's just too overwhelming. There's too much stuff going on. You're better off focusing on something. Like personally, I like container security, so I read about stuff there. But I don't know, I don't really focus on feeds or anything like that because it just takes too much time, and what value are you really getting, honestly? I would say focus your energy. There's really not much of it, so focus on your energy on something that will actually help you in your career and something you're really interested in.
For sure. So kind of segueing off of your last point you just made, granted, like you said, staying specific to one sort of news thread or something like that on a specific topic, what are your best sources that you get information from, whether it be Twitter, Reddit, etc.?
Yeah. I personally use Feedly, pretty much like any RSS reader. But I like Feedly just because it's easy to use after Google Reader was killed. Um, I have a few different feeds that I try to minimize the amount of noise. I kind of unironically like the Register. Um, I think they're from the UK or something, but they have like some funny ways of putting some headlines. But they're usually on top of actually some pretty big news. Just some random ones like Schneer on security, if you heard of him. I mean, he's pretty famous. He likes to reblog interesting stuff. Krebs is also good. Um, but yeah, I'm not actually like when I was younger, I was, but I'm not on Reddit at all, or Twitter, or actually kind of any social media. because again, it's just like there's so much noise. And the same thing, like I don't know, maybe when I was younger it was kind of easier, but as I get older, and I'm only 31, but it's just harder to pay attention to, the signal to noise. So I would say again, like focus on a few different things. It could be like personal blogs or something like that, but don't try to like ingest everything you see. Because I tried getting custom feeds on Twitter. It was just so much. It take me hours to scroll through, and I would caution against it personally. So Hacker News actually is probably my best source. Um, which is the Y Combinator one, not the like Medium one that's named the same, but the Hacker News has some pretty good like high quality stuff to keep up with, and usually high quality technical discussions, which is not really found on Reddit personally. So that's what I would suggest.
Awesome, thank you. Another question out there says, what are some recommendations for a student and for internships, getting internships within cybersecurity?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think cybersecurity in terms of like the internship and junior end is growing, but it's still kind of difficult to um like there's really no such thing as like a junior cybersecurity something, right? Like it's really it's like a meta field within stuff, and there's different paths to get there. Um and I don't think that there are many opportunities to directly jump into cybersecurity. Some of the bigger companies have internships, especially like consulting ones. Um, so you can look there, um, but not a lot of jobs like in big tech will have cybersecurity like internships or stuff like that. I would recommend getting really advanced with all the basics, because like cybersecurity just compounds on a bunch of knowledge. So, if you understand, like if you're coming from the sysadmin side, understanding, uh, networking and trust models and Active Directory and all that stuff. But also, of course, knowing how to code. No matter what you do, you need to know how to code. And then you can come from the software developer side and just knowing how to write really good tooling. Um, and there's tons of internships for those things. I know like some big tech companies might have it. I remember seeing that at Meta or Block, so I'm not really sure of any specifics, but I would say you'd be more successful if you have some pedigree in the like foundational concepts, um, because there's a lot of I'll just say like nonsense titles that people or in jobs try to put, where if you look closely, you actually find that most of the roles that used to be called sysadmin now have like security in the title because they want to attract people. Um, so I wouldn't chase that per se, because like I said, you really need to have a lot of foundational knowledge to do security work. And there's also a lot of gatekeeping, honestly, in the industry. Um, and it's going to be a lot easier if you have some pedigree behind. Um, a lot of the foundational stuff, like I said, either sysadmin or software development, both are valid, like stepping stones. But either way, you should know how to code. Maybe not to the level of like a full software developer, but at least being able to automate some stuff.
All right, and kind of like you said, leading off that, I guess taking the same kind of path, like what are some, do you know of any common misconceptions that people may have had and or like rumored in cybersecurity, and how are some things that, students can get around that, like you were saying about the whole security sysadmin stuff like that, just to attract more people?
Um, yeah, I mean, I would, like I said, I would caution against trying to be the hacker. There's uh think there's some kind of like fascination with infosec as a field from, I mean, when I was younger, I had the same thing, but from outsiders and also people who are trying to get into the field about how working in infosec is like, like Mr. Robot, um, either on the offensive or defensive side. And it's nothing like that at all. Even when it shows like when Elliot was working in a SOC, it's really not like that. And that's fine. Because that's kind of like, that's fantasy. And so I think a lot of people get drawn to cybersecurity for those reasons, is what I've seen with younger people, like myself included. And I actually had like confidence issues because I thought that because I wasn't like elite pen tester, I wasn't like a real security professional. It actually took me a while to understand that that's just its own thing. And everything I do, which is I guess maybe more like blue purple team kind of stuff, is just as important and valid. And honestly, a lot higher paying too. If you really compare the salaries, like purple and blue team stuff generally gets paid way higher than red team, especially as it becomes commoditized. So I would not chase that kind of like hacker persona image. And understand that like when people say cybersecurity, again, a lot of it is like buzzwords, and security is still part of everything. Like even back in the day when I was a sysadmin, we were doing security, it just wasn't called cybersecurity. We weren't like infosec people. So that's why I just say be the best, like whatever your field is. If you come from software developer, then just be a really great software developer. Understand like just things, how to do things securely, which should be part of your job anyway. Because again, like cybersecurity professionals, not necessarily cleaning up insecure code all the time. Like where it's like on a conveyor belt where software developers output some code and then that goes to the security software engineers who clean it up. Like it's not like that. So yeah, that's what I would say. Like understand that a lot of the work is actually like policy and all of the stuff that you might find boring, but that's the actually impactful stuff.
And another question. So seeing what you've been seeing in the industry and what you've been surrounded with, are there any other sort of or I guess past technologies or emerging technologies within cybersecurity? Do you think that like students should be looking out for, paying attention to, and like studying more as they're looking to get into the field?
Yeah, everyone's gonna say machine learning. But yeah, I think that, so I'm, like I said, I'm kind of paranoid and I'm really cynical. So my view is that if you want a job in the next 20 years, you need to be somewhere in machine learning. Otherwise you're just going to become like at best an operator. I've seen like it's in a position where it can legitimately replace people's jobs. I don't think that like there's any cause for alarm right now, but there's a lot of fields that are going to be completely obsolete. I mean, we already see admin as a field is already dying, where you used to have 10 or 20 people. That's literally being done by one person because there's so much technology and vendors around it. But the explosion of like the whole transformer model stuff is like I think like a real existential concern for humanity. Um, like again, not right now because ChatGPT still like fails to do a lot of stuff, at least correctly. But we're getting to the point where um, you're gonna you're gonna be able to have one person on a team leverage tools like GPT models to create a ton of stuff rather than having a team of 10 people. That's the real concern. Like I don't think that you're going to replace all of the jobs, but they're going to reduce the need for teams and scale, especially like distributed teams and all that stuff. So I would say the more you know about machine learning, the more future-proof your job will be.
Right, and kind of going like you just said about, you know, focusing on those types of jobs. Are there any other like big opportunities that cease to exist that are, up and coming, or are they all kind of staying at like a level pace?
Um, I mean, I think anything around machine learning is going to explode. Like on the defensive side, for sure. Like understand because, for example, at Meta, I worked with some people on my team. I mean, all of them are very smart, but there's one person who really knew machine learning and how to apply it to security. And she could do stuff like threat detection, but just create her own models to understand like which logins are anomalous based off just some random data she had, and that's really really valuable to a company. So um, jobs kind of in that area where you don't necessarily need to understand the math behind it, because like I don't know linear algebra at all. I can't even tell you what it is. But knowing how to build a model based off stuff like PyTorch, that can really like augment your value to the market.
Um, like you said, you do have job hopped a little bit, but seeing that you've been at different companies, do you think that you have seen, and you don't have to explain which companies, obviously, but have you seen any like, you know, specific and or like really, dangerous mistakes that companies and other organizations are making when it comes to cybersecurity, and how they like it could affect the company overall if they aren't and are or aren't taking those considerations into taking those problems into consideration?
Yeah, for sure. And I will specifically say not Block because I mean I've only been here a little bit, but Block takes security super seriously. Other jobs, say other companies, uh, it's not that they don't take it seriously, but again, like I said, if you're a product company, your product is not security. Even if you're a security company, like your product is not security. Your product is whatever you provide to users, like an app or a SaaS or something. And security is always going to come second. So you, as a professional, might identify a bunch of stuff that will improve security, but then at the end of the day, how is that going to make money? So that's what I was saying when we first started is um, you need to understand um, like how to balance that. And if you do find something that is important to fix, how are you going to explain that to so-called stakeholders and make them see the value? Because think about like what happens when you, let's say you're at like a big company. What happens when you open up like a SEV internally? That means that someone on some team that is busy developing a product now has to take someone off product development to fix something. That's kind of a big deal if you really think about it. How most teams, maybe they're like 5 to 10 people, and now a percentage of that team has to go and fix your stupid issue. That's how a VP sees it. And of course, we see that as the sky is falling and this needs to get fixed right now. We're going to get hacked. Um, but that's not really the case. So I've seen, yeah, there's a lot of stuff I can't talk about, but I've seen some crazy shit. And and like the landscape is so much more insecure than what anyone realizes, even at really, really big companies. Um, and yeah, and that's if like again, if you want to be like successful, I guess personally or financially, um, understanding how to communicate risks and like the value of fixes and prioritizing um, security issues and stuff like that, that's going to be super valuable to any employer. That's like literally the difference between going from like an L4 to an L7. Like that's really the big thing. It's not about how good you are at coding or finding security bugs. It's how good you are at communication. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I would really love to talk about, but I've signed so many NDAs. I can't even remember how many.
Of course, yeah, and like I said, I wouldn't subject you to doing that. But yeah, I mean, talking about what what you've done with other companies too, in your experience working at a specific within a specific department, do you guys how do you collaborate with, or how have you collaborated as well with other companies, other departments, other organizations, whether that be like like IT, legal compliance, or just a straight out contractor company or something within your division of work in cybersecurity.
There's two kind of main ways. One is as a consultant, which I've done in the past, and then the other way is being part of the company. Either way, you're kind of a consultant. When you're a real consultant, um, you usually communicate through your point of contact, or with a few kind of stakeholders. I mean, I hate saying that word, but that's just what it is. Um, and uh, and as a consultant, um, like you already have a foot in the door because people have paid to have you there. So that's kind of a leg up that you have where, like you're or your company is getting paid a lot of money for you to be there and they know it, so they're going to listen. Doesn't mean that the engineers and other people will listen. And that's really the problem is when you are an external consultant, you're typically kind of seen as an enemy. You kind of like you're a threat to internal employees. And again, that's where communication comes in, where you have to understand how to um, um, make allies. There's actually a book called The Trusted Advisor, which everyone should read, because it teaches you how to build like trust relationship with people and make them fight for you. So if you can get what's called an internal champion inside the company to fight for you, you're gonna have a much more successful time. Um, and even so, I think it's a lot easier as a consultant externally because you're kind of seen in, it depends which company you work for, but companies I work for, like at ScaleSec, people saw us as I guess like special forces, so to speak. Being internal, that's a different story. You would think that being in the same company, you're on the same team, but you're not. The bigger the company, the harder it is for people to feel, I guess, cohesive. But you're still kind of at odds, like I was saying. If you find some kind of vulnerability and you report it, you're gonna have to convince people why that's important. Um, um, but in terms of like inter-team dynamics, again, it just depends what you do. If you're more of a analyst or partner or something versus more of the engineering side, like I've typically been on the engineering side, and it's kind of your typical, well, not so typical software development because thankfully most of the companies I worked at don't use agile or other nonsense like that. Um, so yeah, it's really not too different from like other engineering jobs.
Right. And granted, like I said, if you can't talk about it, you're not allowed, no big deal. But I was just curious, within, your work in the past, however many years, within cybersecurity, have you came across any ethical dilemmas, within your field? And were there specific ways that you've approached them or were just told not to approach them, etc.?
Hmm. I don't think I can answer that.
That's all good. All right, cool. So, one, I guess, to a more positive aspect, I guess. So within your work, granted, getting up 9 to 5 every day is work, but if you enjoy it, how much of that keeps you staying motivated and engaged in your field? And do you have any like specific strategies on avoiding burnout or avoiding just not hate, but I don't know the right word to use for that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Um, yeah, I mean, I think people get burnt out when they care a lot about something, but they lose agency. Um, like one typical example is like someone who's very passionate about fixing issues, but the company doesn't care. That's a easy road to burnout. Um, it's actually not really like working too much. You have to work a lot to get just burnt out by working because I don't personally like recommend or believe in working like 80 hours a week. There's a lot of people who do, and as long as you feel rewarded, it's not really going to lead to burnout. Like maybe you'll be tired, but burnout specifically is um is usually caused by like not feeling rewarded by anything you do. And like I said, the main cause I think is lack of agency where you can't really make any meaningful changes. Um so to avoid that, um like it's important to be aware. So understand the symptoms leading up to burnout because it's pretty evident if you're on the lookout for it. So like being agitated, irritated, more tired than usual, um, feeling more dread about work more than usual. And again, you have to really understand what more than usual means because some people, like I'm not a morning person, so I feel dread every morning. But if you notice that like in the past week you've been like really reluctant to get out of bed and and stuff like that, and you've been like snapping at people, could be burnout. Um, and I've dealt with burnout a lot. Honestly, the only way I know how to fix it is just to leave. I've never ever seen anyone solve burnout by like taking time off. Like you can take 2-3 weeks off, and you go back to the same situation, and it's not going to fix anything. So sometimes just understand that it might suck, and you have to leave your job, but it is what it is.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess on the flip side of that, I guess in your experiences, have you had any job experience or job projects or anything like that have been super interesting or super rewarding that you've worked on or contributed to? And what made that or them so compelling?
Yeah, definitely. Uh like the best part is I mean exactly the opposite of what I said is when you have agency for change. So for example, I was able to um like design a multi-cloud strategy for this large bank, and it was really cool to see them actually implement it and seeing like literally like seeing customers like that I personally know, like just walking around seeing people using that stuff. Very cool to know that I had a part in that. Um, which is why like I would recommend if you really want to get into the industry, like doing boutique consulting. So like finding a small consulting firm that does security, a great way to get experience because I was working on something different usually every 2 weeks, and you'll never get that much variety in like a traditional company. And also the amount of like the fields I worked in from like fintech and healthcare and just random stuff. You'll never be exposed to anything like that. Um, but yeah, stuff like that where I like big projects with a lot of moving parts and actually like real impact have been the most rewarding things to work on.
Yeah, awesome. All right, cool. So, I have a couple questions for more like the educational side of it, because a lot of people listening in and also here are on the educational side of the industry or in cybersecurity. If there were a couple classes, a couple online courses, certificates, any other resources that have been super valuable to you, what are those, and why would you say that they're very valuable in their own ways?
Yeah. So it would depend what you mean by valuable. Like there's people who like to just learn for the sake of learning, and I wish I could be like that. But I'm not. I've personally like I didn't have bad grades, but I never was able to study. Like I either knew it or I didn't know it. And that's just how I am. Like for me personally, value means a better job or more money or something like that. But again, some people just like learning and education. In that case, like there's a lot of like master's programs that are pretty good. And that might be a good route if you really like learning. I wouldn't recommend a master's to get a better job because most of the time, the ROI just it's not going to make sense. As opposed to having a real experience and then job hopping for the next couple of years, you're going to have much higher salary in the end. In terms of things like certs, because again, I think that like a lot of traditional programs don't do a good job preparing you for the real world. Um, I would recommend like if you're really starting out, just getting the basics. Like Security Plus is just a bare minimum. It's fairly easy, and might open up the door if you want to do like government work, stuff like that. A lot of them require at least a Security Plus. It also just forces you to learn some stuff that you would need for just like entry level jobs. If you're really going for something, the CISSP, I know like I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's kind of like the um, holy grail, not because it's great, but because just everyone expects you to have it at a certain level. Um, that's the only cert that I thought was like actually worthwhile and hard, because it's you just have to know so many different things about like policies and fire extinguisher types and like network security and encryption, like everything that you might possibly encounter. Um, and it's not valuable in itself, but it really opens up a lot of doors. And I mean, it's just kind of cool to know just random stuff like that, like a Class K fire or whatever. So I would say that if you value like learning for the sake of learning, just get a master's while you work. But if you want education for better jobs, like the certs I mentioned, maybe if you're getting into cloud, the cloud certs like um, the AWS like security specialty, or the GCP security engineer one, those are pretty good. And again, not because they will magically open doors, but they'll just get you a little bit ahead of someone who doesn't have it. In terms of like just getting your resume read. That's really all that matters.
And I mean, last question I have. I mean, we're coming down on time too, but waiting for anything else to come up in the chat. But obviously the term hindsight's 2020. If you could have any kind of recommendation or just thoughtful knowledge for anyone that's like in your shoes, if you were looking back on something that you wish you would have done better and or would have done in general, to kind of like better the road, or not saying that it isn't good, but just like kind of as like a helpful tool, or like a good resource that you could have utilized that you wish you did, something in that nature. If there's anything that you would put out there for like a helping hand, what would that be?
Yeah, definitely assume that you don't know what you're talking about. Like when I was younger and early in my career, I've made a lot of mistakes kind of assuming that I'm right or I know more than I really know. And even if you know something on paper, a lot of the times early in your career, you don't really have the context to understand it. Um, where it's not really about um, like it's not on the same lines of as like writing some code, which is somewhat objective. It's like understanding things in context. And I've spoken like beyond my years, so people have said, and taking more time to like just learn and absorb stuff, and I think that that would have helped a bit, and it just makes you more likable too. Um, but I would say just really focus on understanding business needs for security. Um, like if I understood that earlier, I think I would have been even more ahead in my career. Um, like not that I'm not ahead now, but like it's just a one up that you will have because just not many people care or even think about it, right? Like understanding like the basics of business, but also things like risks and risk prioritization, and communicating with stakeholders. All of that stuff will make you seem 10 times more mature, and valuable, where you could legitimately get, big promotions 1 or 2 years apart, just by the way that you present and think about stuff, even if it's, like not who you are. That doesn't really matter. So that's what I would recommend.
All right, awesome. I really appreciate that. I'm not seeing any more questions on my end. Like I said, if you wanna, get a last little sentence or two in there for, anything, any thoughts or last minute words, you're more than welcome to do that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, if anyone has any other questions, you can just ping me on Discord. I'll hang around after. But yeah, I would say like, the best advice I can give legitimately is to focus less on the technical stuff, because maybe knowing how to invert a binary tree can pass in an interview, but if you want the real money, you need to understand like the business components. And so taking time to like read about security from a business side is going to get you a lot farther than studying like algorithms and stuff like that. What I would say.
Yeah, absolutely awesome. Well, we really appreciate you coming to and asking, answering all of our questions. Like Elon said, if you have any other questions or anything, you can ping them in the Discord. Again, we have the flag for this talk up on the screen here. Again, thank you very much for letting us ask away, and appreciate your time with us, and taking the time out of your day to spend with Jersey CTF.
Yep, no problem. Thanks a
All
lot.
right, thank you very much, Elon.
All right, thank you, Ilan. And next, we'll be welcoming Kevin Conklin from the FBI Newark. So please stay tuned for that live stream. And yeah, thank you so much. Let us know if you have any questions.